Welcome back to Performance Process, everybody. I'm Caley Fretz, here with Ronan McLaughlin. As always, hello, Ronan. Where are we? This is going to be a somewhat unusual episode.
We're in Terneuzen, are we? Isn't that the name of this?
Terneuzen.
Yeah, in the Netherlands for the start of Scheldeprijs. Scheldeprijs coming between Flanders and Roubaix, so we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon at this point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we're standing outside the Bora Hansgrohe bus, looking at that team's fleet of tarmac SL8s that they will be racing today. And a couple of interesting little things that's sort of got us thinking, well, perhaps we should do a little pit walk style episode.
Yeah, we like a good pit walk. I think the listeners out there like a good pit walk. So that's what we're going to do. Obviously, today's race, I guess we should sort of put the thing in context, right? So today's race is it's a little Sprinters Classic midweek thing. There's a little bit of cobbles today, but not enough. Basically, everybody's on a normal road setup. So we're going to be looking at sort of the optimization around, well, a normal road setup for a very flat bicycle race.
And yeah, I think that's actually one of the things that has changed with this race over time. So the race's popularity and prestige sort of tracks with how well Belgium tend to be doing. So if Tom Boonen was here, it would be a lot busier than we're seeing today.
Yes,
but
bit quiet, bit rainy.
It also tracks with sort of trends in tech. So previously we would have seen this race as the last chance to try out your Paris-Roubaix specific setups. And instead of that today, what we're seeing is teams optimizing for a flat race, irrelevant to the fact that it comes between Flanders and Roubaix. And so standing specifically here looking at the Bora bikes, what we see is they've on Sunday they were using 28mm turbo cotton Hell of the North tires. Today they're just back to the standard 26mm turbo cottons. They're also running today 1x SRAM chain rings.
It's a big ring.
It is pretty big. I was getting in there to try and see the size, but it's not visible on the outside of this chain ring.
And neither of us can count that high, unfortunately.
That's a problem. I forgot the calculator.
They are big, though. And they look like a 50...
Probably 55s, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they look like a 55, 56, I was going to say, based off size.
I think also interesting is just two things about the Bora bikes here. First, they're obviously SRAM-equipped team this year, but they're all still running Shimano pedals, which is something we've seen with Trek a couple of years ago when they moved to SRAM. I would expect that to change for next year or at some point in the future. And then
SRAM owns time now.
Exactly, yes. Sorry, I was saying SRAM pedals, wasn't it? That's a bit unclear. The other two things, was just the sheer number of different specialized saddles on offer here. Is there any two bikes with the same saddle? I don't think there actually is. We've got 2, 4, 7 bikes here, 7 different specialized saddles, and then finally the array of different handlebar setups you've got. So a lot of riders running Roval's new Rapide Aero bar stem integrated,
which looks good. I like the look of the curve and the drops on it.
It does look good, but presumably it's something to do with that curve or something. There are some riders who are still opting for 2-piece setups using the Tarmac SL7 stem. And just as I say that, I noticed that there are also riders who prefer a much longer stem length, so perhaps something to do with stem length availability or something on the integrated system. But
yeah, we're looking at Emil Herzog's right in front of us, and he's got that's got to be a 140 on there, 150.
It's lengthy. It's 130 minimum, and then Danny Van Poppel has, I think his is even longer. I think his might be 140.
And they're the two riders that are not on the one-piece system, so that would check out. That's a pretty good hypothesis as to why they would not be running the one pieces. Maybe they just don't make them that long.
I'm not the exact size they make aren't springing to mind right now. It's something I can check before writing an article up or whatever. But seems plausible.
You mentioned the saddle thing, and it's unusual to see this many different saddles in a given team. I mean, I just think over the years, you walk up a team sponsored by Physique or whomever, and it's like one or two options, right? It's sort of like you either got one with a cutout or you got one without, and that's kind of the only difference. But they're clearly spending a lot more time as part of the fit process going through saddle choices.
And I just wonder what that fit process looks like. Is it...
Well, they retool. Right?
Yeah, but how are they ending up, how are they determining the correct saddle for the rider? Is the rider literally getting a chance to try every one, or is it based off what they have used previously or what their preferences are? I'm sure there's some science goes into it, but it's interesting that every rider has ended up in a different saddle. if we're being skeptical, you could say maybe a bit of marketing in there. They want as many riders on as many different saddles as possible.
Feels like they wouldn't do that, though.
I mean,
right?
the chances of then getting the 7 riders lining up today to be on different saddles is, you've got a better chance if you spread as many saddles as possible across the team. But I think it is just sheer chance that we have so many variations today.
And it looks like about 6 out of the 8 here, or 6 out of the 7, on some sort of mirror saddle from Specialized, which is obviously the 3D printed. It's got a bunch of holes in it. Basically, is the way that you can tell from afar.
Yeah,
it seems to be quite popular.
And one interesting one that is, it looks like it's got a mirror beneath a more standard sort of cover material on Marco Haller's bike here. So yeah.
Maybe a little, is that prototype? I haven't seen that before.
I feel like I've seen it before. I'm not placing it right now, but it looks like it's got that mirror technology beneath whatever cover material that is. We move along?
Yeah, let's move along.
Just arriving here at the Lidl Trek bus, or Lidl Trek, depending on how you pronounce it. Again, another SRAM-equipped team, and it must be a nightmare for the mechanics these days. Like these guys, a lot of these guys racing Sunday in Flanders on 2x setups, and a lot of them today are running 1x setups, presumably on the same bike. And yeah, everybody here on Trek's new Madone. I don't see any Amandas or Demanes here. But again, you've got a mixture of 1-piece and 2-piece setups, and old stems and new stems, and you've even got Hugo Ula's bike here, which has the Amanda handlebar on the Madone frame. So there seems to be more riders than not opting for the new Aero RSL 2-piece handlebar with a separate stem, and there's only actually 2 riders of the 7 here who have opted for the Madone specific Aero integrated bar stem,
which I think is quite a bit heavier, was one of the issues.
Yeah, I mean, for what it is, an integrated bar stem with aero profile like that, it's actually, haven't felt a bare bar with no levers or anything. It's surprisingly light, but it probably is a bit heavier than the 2-piece setup. And
they've clearly spent their time hacking down bars. I would, it's not quite how it works with road bars. We got a lot of narrow handlebars here. They're not a big fan of anything over about a 38.
They're all very, very narrow, and yeah, like I mean, that's the thing for me. If it is about weight that the riders are choosing the 2-piece setup, it just makes no sense for the riders that we have and for the bikes that they have here to be fixated on whatever few grams you can save with that 2-piece setup doesn't really seem to. I think it might again come back to either the fact that Madone bar has a huge flare on it, or the availability of sizes, and maybe even just the option to get your preferred handlebar angle dialed in with a 1-piece setup. There is no option. You have what you get.
Yeah.
Riders coming out to go to sign on. A lot of white overshoes, which are not going to be white in a few hours from now.
But they're all those sort of aero overshoes, like the rubberized toe and the trip strips down the side. It was
one of the things that I'd noted in my Tour of Flanders gallery when the Lidl Trek women's team came out for the Tour of Flanders sign on. It was notable how much aero trickery they had going on. I'd joked with Lizzie Dignan that there was something special happening today if she was wearing aero overshoes, because she's not a rider who's typically into that sort of setup. But I mean, the eventual winner, Elisa Longo Borghini, had those sort of latex looking aero gloves and the aero overshoes and the aero helmet. And
do you know if Trek's got somebody internally doing optimization work? I mean, we've talked a whole bunch about how teams like Ineos definitely have that individual. Bisma Lisa Bike has that individual. Is there anybody at Trek right now? We could ask Amy, actually. We just walk by.
Yeah, that might be better. Well, I think what the answer might be is, like, if we want to say this is like a works team, like they actually Trek are highly involved in the squad. It might actually be someone within Trek doing that sort of work rather than a specific individual within the team, because I've certainly never heard it mentioned all that much. And Cohen de Court, I know, kind of does a lot of that work too, but maybe not. Maybe more as a rider input rather than a engineering sort of background.
Amy's just disappeared. We'll come back and try.
We needed her, so we timed it perfectly just to miss her.
The press officer at Trek, generally very helpful, but we just missed her. So we'll find out the answer to that question and see if there's anybody there.
She wasn't helpful on Sunday, though, when she banned me from measuring the prototype Pirellis with my vernier calipers.
Well, it depends who she's trying to help.
Yeah, she was definitely helpful to Pirelli in the team, but not to me.
Yeah, I guess it's just worth noting because to me, it feels like a significant step up in focus on that sort of thing from that team in particular, based on even just a couple years ago. And because we've talked about this a lot of times on other podcasts, because they are now not flush with cash, but certainly a bit more than they used to have. I wonder if that's a role that has come into play in the last year or so.
I would be pretty certain that if it hasn't already, it will do pretty soon.
Yeah. So we've just walked up to Tudor, the Fabian Cancellara team, and they're on BMCs. Swiss connection, obviously. Anything of interest on these SLR ones?
It might just take us as an opportunity to let listeners know, if they haven't seen it yet, that I have a few galleries on the website delving into some of the tech and the bikes at Tour of Flanders. And one of the things I pointed out is, again, if we're talking about integrated handlebars and flare drop and all that, the new BMC Team Machine R bikes, the handlebars on them, which I had mentioned when I reviewed that bike back in October, they do sort of force you into this. There's a 12.5 degree flare on them, which is pretty extreme for a road bike, and it sort of does force you, especially with the existing SRAM levers, to sort of adopt that inward angle, and certainly some of the Tudor riders that I had included in that gallery, their bikes had some extreme lever angles going on, and yeah, much the same here today.
All the same saddle, except for there's slight differences in the Celitalia. I think it's 4 of them are the same.
Yeah, it's not as noticeable.
Does Celitalia do a 3D printed? What is that over there?
They do now, yeah, as of last summer, I think. And it's quite interesting looking saddle. It's sort of a bit of that dual twin nose design going on with the 3D printed padding. The other thing, this team also on SRAM, also all on one by today. So I think SRAM are making a bit of a one by statement today.
Yeah.
They're making a one-dimensional statement.
Oh, we got a front derailleur right here. We got one front derailleur.
Yeah. Noticeable that the one front derailleur and the one 2x setup is on the one non-aero bike.
Yep. Ronan, can we place a small wager?
Yeah.
So, if either of us can find a tubular today.
I mean, that's easy. Just go to Confidence. What was the wager going to be?
I was going to say €5 to whoever finds it, but if you already know where they are, that's a little. I rescind the.
You can just give me the €5.
We're walking up to the Total Energies bus with their Envy frames, and I don't know a ton about these other than our good friend Zach Edwards, Boulder Gruppetto, currently has one. And likes it quite a lot. In fact, it's the bike that he brought over to Belgium here when he was coming to visit his partner Ruth. He says good things about it, and we both know that Zach is not afraid to say bad things when...
This is what surprised me. Every time I see a picture of Zach's bike and it's a somewhat aero, do it all rounder with internal hose routing and that. It surprised me he has that bike. But
yeah, I mean, his other bike is a Thai Mosaic, right? So bit of a departure with rim brakes. I think more broadly, Envy's sort of conversion from a pure wheel brand into a brand that makes quite a bit more is fascinating. And frames were kind of the last frontier for them. And they've been doing bars and stems and seat posts and all sorts of stuff for a while. But frames, yeah, the next step, and they look good. Like it doesn't.
They look good, and I think also the riders on Total Energies are probably considering themselves quite lucky. That is not really a big team anymore, and over the last few years they've had Willier, Specialized, and now Envy.
So the Sagan effect.
They've been doing all right recently. Will we drop this team in a bit of hot water here?
Let's do it.
They're running Envy's SES 4.5 rims with a 25mm internal and 28mm tires. So
the tires are still on.
I mean, the UCI do not listen to this podcast, so they're safe enough. But I think
certainly now that Mick Rogers is out, they're definitely not listening to this podcast.
I think to be fair though, I don't think the UCI listen to this podcast. And to be fair, I know it's going to take a bit of time for teams to they will have a stock of 28mm tires. And it's going to take a bit of time to get them changed over to 30s. At the same time, that isn't really an excuse because UCI made this abundantly clear in December they were going to enforce this rule. It wasn't enforced. There were some incidents, and now it is going to be enforced. So really, teams should have been making these moves in December to make sure they had 30s instead of 28s for this season.
Yeah. Well, and it's also worth pointing out that lots of teams have been running this setup for a long time and without issues, right? It just seems to be sort of particular combinations or basically you're just sort of living on the edge is the problem, is what our understanding is.
And the fact they've been running without issue, an absence of evidence is not evidence of an absence.
Yes, so correct.
There were some issues that led to that move. It wasn't out of nowhere. Moving along, though, before they realised we've dumped them in hot water.
We got a junior team here.
I'd say just passing Jaco, they're all on Propels today. Michael Matthews was on a TCR on Sunday, which, I'm a fan of the TCR, but I'm not sure I would choose it as a race bike these days when they've got something like the Propel on offer. We've got the whole crowd here talking about the UCI rules, I'm hearing. KTM, do you want to... Is Shoddy Dave around here? Could we ask him what he thinks of the KTMs?
I mean, he might be, actually. What team is this?
This is Beat Cycling Club, Dutch Pro Conti squad.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not slightly smaller budget.
Smaller, I think if they turned up to a smaller race than this, they're going to be one of the favourites, but turning up for this race in the World Tour squads that are here,
less so.
Yeah, they're probably a team aiming to get into the break today, but I think what's always interesting about these teams is, and we talk about different saddles, this team has 7 different saddle manufacturers on show here rather than just 7 different saddle
so no
models.
Saddle sponsor period.
Maybe a little exaggeration there, but I can definitely spot 4 different saddle manufacturers here. But I mean, apart from that, they seem to be all running Wahoo Speedplay pedals, Wahoo head units, so that seems to be some sort of partnership there. Obviously the KTMs that we've already jokingly referred to, but they're running KTMs with fast forward rims and Vredestein tires, which you don't often see these days. Vredestein it was big when I got into cycling, but not so much these days.
What are they
certainly
on?
not in the racing space. They're on the Super Passos, and it's 28 mil.
28 mil Super Passo.
Yeah.
I like a good tan wall, so I'm in favor.
Is that? Would you classify that as a tan wall? It's a bit
sort
like
of a rubber
Continental's
wall.
transparent wall, which
Yeah.
not sure. Speaking of which, I can see Continental's transparent wall on the Team UAE car here beside us, and I'm just going to go over and check because my thinking was that they had probably using those transparent wall tires that you never see World Tour teams using because they probably had to find 30s in a hurry last Thursday when the UCI made that statement.
Yep.
And I'm thinking that's maybe the only 30s they could have found. So I'm going to see if we can briefly check if they are definitely 30s or what's going on here. Yes, those are 30 mils with the transparent. So it's awfully frustrating, the Continentals. They put the tire measurement stamp so small on the tire.
You need your calipers.
Vittorias are much nicer. They can. Well, I mean, you could measure them with a caliper. Who knows if you're going to get?
Who knows what size that actually is?
Depends on the rim. Depends a lot on the rim at that point.
Carbon chain rings.
Yeah, they're using carbon TI chain rings and brake rotors this season, probably just to save a bit more, but a few more grams from the Colnago, which, having weighed, is not the lightest of the do-it-all frames. They're certainly, if you're Tadej Pogacar and you're looking for a 6.8 kilo bike, you're going to need to do some work to it to get there.
Something else we noticed, actually at Flanders, was that a bunch of riders were running 140 front and rear rotors, and sort of going all the way back, I'm actually surprised we don't see this more often because you don't need the heat dissipation on a race like today. You don't need the heat dissipation on pretty much anything in the entire classics, right? Like even some of the hillier ones, you don't really need it.
On Sunday, they may actually have been welcoming a bit of extra heat from the rotors.
Yeah, we got a helicopter coming in. You do get a bit more power out of a 160, and I think that changing up the way the brakes feel that dramatically maybe is something that the riders don't want to do. They don't want to swap back and forth, but they're a bit lighter. I'm assuming they're a bit more aerodynamic. Like it seems like Van der Poel, for example, was on 140 front and rear on Sunday.
Which is a setup he knows from cross also.
Yeah, and so maybe he knows and likes the feel. But I guess I'm just a little bit surprised we don't see it more often in flat races. Like most of these are center lock. It's not a huge deal to swap rotor size, right? So
I think it is something we will probably see more of going forward. I think in terms of an aero gain, I mean, even if it's small, you're better to have it. But I think it is a very, very small gain from what I've been told. So yeah, I do think though it's something we'll see more of with time. There'll be a lot of people thinking we should be going bigger on the rotors, but you never get it, like especially a day like this
It's
when it's so
horses for
slippery and so
courses.
wet.
Yeah.
You're never going to get a chance to use the full capacity of the brakes anyway without having to
It's horses for courses, right? Like dry roads doing alpine switchbacks where you're coming into it at 70k an hour and you got to drop yourself down to 18k an hour and back up again, right? Like that's when you want the big old rotors and the power and the control that those give you, but they don't need any of that today. There's not going to be any need for it.
I'm sure there'll be a few lockups today. Because with this wind and these conditions, I'm sure
and it's wet. Yeah, it's damp.
be a
Although the
nervous
sun's coming
peloton.
out. Sun's coming out now. Yeah. Walking up to Lotto Destiny and their Roubaix. I think these are beautiful bikes, personally.
I don't know. There's something about them that doesn't.
Depends on the size. So
they don't flow or something for me, or they don't look proportional, or there's something.
Lionel Tamignol, I think his looks great. And then whose is this over here? This is Jarne van der Paar. Jarne's too big.
Yeah, and then there's something also I just always really struggle with the FSA ACR internal routing. It just always looks like an add-on rather than a piece of the puzzle. So interesting that some of these riders are today riding Zip 454 NSWs. No issue there with the inner rim width and tire width because those rims have a 23mm internal. But when I checked them on Sunday, a lot of riders on those wheels are riding 28mm tires. And today, for the last cobble heavy race, they're riding 30 tires. So
interesting. So maybe this is the Roubaix setup?
This could be a Roubaix test, certainly. Although Zip told me in the podcast a couple weeks ago that they recommend their teams ride the 303 Firecrest for cobbled races. They're the most.
Because they're a bit stronger?
Yeah, they said that all their wheels pass the same impact testing, but that the 303s were designed for the roughest races or something. That was it. And I took that to mean that they passed them even more than some wheels pass the testing.
I mean, don't they recommend those even for gravel and things like that?
Yeah, so they're a gravel and cobbled racing wheel set was how they described them. I want to just touch though on the fact that Lotto are using Zip wheels here because there's a lot of confusion over why Lotto are using. Some Lotto riders have been seen with Roubaix's own in-house brand wheel sets. I can't pronounce it, so I'm not going to try. But
the context behind this is the team of Thomas de Gent.
Yes,
with the blow off. / crash / break / whatever it was it Oman, right? UAE that set off a lot of this hookless discussion or contributed to a lot of this hookless discussion.
And as we've seen some Lotto Destiny riders move across to the Roubaix branded wheels, there's been sort of conclusions that must be a sign of a lack of faith in the Zip product or whatever. And my understanding is, and even before that switch happened, we had heard as early as January that this team was actually going to be using Roubaix wheels this season. So when it turned up using Zip, that was a surprise. My understanding is that Roubaix couldn't get those wheels or enough of those wheels together quick enough for the team, and so they actually went out and they purchased Zips, probably on some OEM deal or something. Yeah. They didn't pay retail for them. But the Zip wheels that we've seen this team using, they were purchased product. Lotto were not a Zip partner team. And yeah, Zip
has to love that. So they don't even sponsor the team, and then they get the
and
PR.
I mean, if you're talking about if you speak to any other sponsor in the World Tour's equipment sponsor, they're highly involved these days, especially something that's critical as a frame or wheels. And so to not have their engineers embedded in the team, that there's questions there whether that led to some of the issues that we've seen or not. A lack of communication or whatever, which I mean, again, if that's the case, it kind of speaks to the same scenario the average consumer will find themselves in, buy the wheels and not entirely understand.
Returning to the Roubaix, we're looking at the Orca Aero here. It looks kind of like a pure aero bike in a way that a lot don't anymore. And this is just the eye wind tunnel, which is not particularly effective, but. There's they pulled out all the stops. Is basically what I'm saying.
I think that's actually part of the reason why aesthetically I can't warm to it is because it's designed. Looking at it, it looks like they've designed it to be aero rather than to be good looking, which I mean is commendable. Fair play to them for doing that.
Like I said, I like it, but only in kind of like 54 and smaller.
Interesting or number 107s here. You checked his name earlier, but I can't see it in the side of the bike. He's got tubeless sealant all over his calipers and presumably some of his rotors there as well. So
hopefully he can stop.
It's going to be sticky, could be squealy, but I'm just wondering. Yeah, that's not. It's not something you want to see before the start, is it?
No. All right, where are we headed?
We are at Tour de Tiedemann, outside the Tour de Tiedemann. Well, we're actually at the moment standing in front of the team car, so this is all spare bikes on the roof. The actual bikes the team will be racing are over here. Not sure how we messed up because these are definitely the brightest and the easiest spotted bikes in the peloton. Is there any? Let's say they're a head turner. Is that?
They're yes. Loud.
They're white,
I
blue,
kinda like it,
pink, everything. What I actually want to check here is, I mean, they're riding Cannondale, so we've got some on the System 6, some on the new Super 6. I think if I was picking for today, I'd probably prefer the System 6, the full-on aero setup there.
For sure.
But what I'm actually looking for is see if any of these riders have the new scope wheels, because they're the only team here racing on scope wheels, but they don't have the crazy new scopes that we've seen announced last week. Unfortunately, I can't get a close-up look at those. The ones inspired by the fish scales with the 3D printed hubs, which I think I referred to.
Tell me about scope. Tell me about scope.
Well, wheel brand out of the Netherlands.
Yep.
They've been around for a while. They make some quality wheels. You might remember the Scope Atmos tire pressure adjusting system that teams of DSM have used at Roubaix last year and threatened to use the year before, but didn't actually go ahead and do it. Well, Scope now have a new wheel that is, it's got fish scales all over the rim.
Great.
Thought to be an aero
Love it.
hack of some sort.
Like the whale wheels that came out a couple years ago.
They make the whale wheels look.
We like organically optimized, inspired.
This is the first time that the fish have well and truly put the whales into their shadow. It's usually the other way around. And then they've got a 3D printed hub. And I mean, you're looking at, I think it's sub 1,200 grams for a 50 or 60 mil wheel set.
Wow.
They're insanely light. And yeah, we're sort of interested to hear more, maybe review those wheels. Haven't actually lined that up yet, but the 3D printed hubs are certainly an interesting feature. I think I described them on the Geek Warning podcast as a warranty generator. And so only time will tell if that's the case or not, but I'm sure they've done their testing and whatever to sort of be confident in what they're putting out. So I'm probably being very unfair there.
More broadly, we can put some kudos where kudos are due. That like this is a YouTuber that made a cycling team that's now at Scheldeprijs.
Yes,
like that's pretty cool.
With the best looking bikes.
Yeah,
I mean this paint job will not be for everybody, but
really cool.
Yeah,
like well done to the Titama boys. That they went from bringing pizzas to pro riders at the end of the Tour de France to running a whole team here.
They went from being on a future generation of the team that I once rode for.
Yep.
To actually being in Scheldeprijs. Upsetting the Tour de France organizers, doing all sorts. So
love it.
Yeah,
love what you do. Should we start a pro cycling team? Escape collective pro cycling team?
Let's not.
No, that sounds like a lot of work.
It doesn't seem like a responsible thing to do with members' money.
Well, we got the Scots of Q365. We've got Uno X nearby. Astana.
The new Scott foils, they're not new at this point. They've been out for a year or two at this point. But I think they probably don't get the credit they deserve in terms of like a lightweight aero bike, do it all, used almost everywhere these days.
The original foil still one of my favorite bikes ever. Yeah.
And I mean these, in terms of ticking aero boxes, you'd go a long way to look past the Scott foil at the moment. It has a lot going for it there. So yeah.
Well, here's the question. So we walked most of the way around the paddock now. Which of these, you can't change a thing. You can't change anything on the bike. Which of these do you want to race?
You've put me under a lot of pressure here. It's very hard to. I mean, that's Scott. Not going to be far off.
So if you're racing, let's set the context here. So if you're racing Scheldeprijs,
yes.
Which one?
Actually, if I was racing Scheldeprijs, you're going to have to allow me to change one thing. I'm going to change it back to stock. Alexander Kristoff's new aero bike, which we have on the website today. It's a prototype already approved. It absolutely
Should we go look at
cool.
it?
Yeah, let's give it a look at it.
We're right next to Uno X
One thing I want to mention about that bike is this bike that we're going over to see has both UCI approved sticker on it and a UCI prototype sticker on it, which
interesting
is not like an approved frame is something that is ready for consumer. It's a consumer ready, production ready model. As such, cannot be a prototype. I think that just makes a mockery of...
Is he even here?
He's not here. No.
He's not here. The bike's not here.
But I can still pick that one if I want because the team will have it soon enough. But
nope, you can't actually because you need to pick one that's here.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say was that bike. Check it out on the website because that ticks a lot of the box. Obviously, no testing. Haven't even picked the thing up. But
which one would you ride if just for home?
I'll answer your first question. I think I think now if I was racing Scheldeprijs, it would have to either be the Cannondale System 6 that we see Tour de Tiedemann with here.
Yep.
And I'm not actually picking that because for some reason they've gone with less than aero handlebar stem setup rather than what you might have gone with on a bike of that aero pedigree, let's say. Beyond that, it's yeah. I mean, that either that Scott Foyle or the Trek Madone if I was racing today here. Like it's So what I'm looking for is something that is, no compromise aerodynamics.
Yep.
And I'm not sure the Scott Foyle has no compromise aerodynamics, but it's pretty damn close. It's got a lot of aero goodness going on there. Trek Madone's close behind. If I was looking for a bike at home, we didn't actually get the Jayco, so I'm not sure if there's a new TCR here. And I didn't actually check out Specialized either or Quick Step either, but the SL8 might be something that for an at-home bike. My own at-home bike is a Tarmac SL6.
System 6, Cannondale.
I think so. Which we're going back a few years with that one. I think everybody's crying out for a new System 6 at this point, a fully modern aero optimized System 6. But I'm not sure that's ever going to come.
Running the Alpecin de Koenig guys just rolling by us here on their canyons.
It's kind of getting hard to cover those canyons at this point because how old is that frame now?
It's getting up there.
I mean, there's
nice
slight updates to it, but
and they're of course wearing their
double denim.
Their double denim, their Canadian tuxedos, which I kind of like.
I think there's less we can say about that. It's actually a good opportunity to get up close to the bikes here because they're just laying aside.
Yeah, they just got back from sign-on.
There's no bike racks. They're all just lying against the side of the bus. They are...
Shows how much they care about this bike race.
Pretty... I think the bus driver's just getting ready to get out of here as quick as he can. But
here's all 140s. There we go.
All 140s and all on 30mm tires with their 60mm C60 Dura-Ace wheel sets.
If you took this exact bike and had a time machine and took it back to somebody in like 2014... I'm not sure they'd believe you that this is what bikes look like.
And that's one of the things about this bike. It's not like loud enough or brash enough or brazen enough to sort of shout that in your face and make you think like that. It takes you to point that out.
Yeah.
To sort of to just think about it in those terms.
But just think like the details. Even if you took it to you in 2014, like somebody who pays attention to the details, you'd be like, no, surely this surely isn't faster.
Where's the cables?
Surely not.
Is 2014 far enough back? I think it might have been believable at that point. But
maybe.
A couple of years before that, definitely not.
2010, if you're like, no, like 30s are better, and everyone's on disc brakes, and
I think
the aero bikes don't actually look as aero as they did back then. Like, remember some of the old, eyeball aero? Like the best one, my favorite was the I can't remember the model name, but it was a Cipollini, you could tell it looked like a 12-year-old drew. The super fast sports car version of a bicycle, and that's what popped out of the mold. It's a little bit different now. A little bit different.
And I think that's when you asked me what bike I would have there, for racing. As I mentioned, I'm looking for an out-and-out aero bike, but which bike I would have for home, presuming then it's not racing.
Yeah.
That's, again, I think there are...
Like that DeRosa, maybe. That just rolled by.
Not sure if I would go with that either, but the point I was going to make was that you're looking for two very different bikes in those two questions, I think.
Yeah. Modern World Tour equipment is as Joe Lindsay put it, it's haute couture now, right? Like it's
for going
pretty
fast
far away from
fast
what most of us even want. Like even those of us who like to go fast and like to race and whatever else, it's still not really what we need and want at home a lot of the time. So, yeah. I think I'd take an SL8 to answer my own question. For home bike of all these. So we were talking about this a little bit on the way in. It's Wednesday. It's wet. Roubaix is this weekend. If you're Tim Merlier, are you finishing today's race? Are you?
I mean, he's definitely here to finish. He's not here to finish. He's here to win.
Yeah.
He's a sprinter. It's a sprinter's classic. These guys are wired differently, but I'll tell you my thinking. I had to do a similar race in Belgium, 1.1 or something like that, in the Wednesday before I was to ride the Worlds on the Sunday in 2012, and that was the worst couple of hours of my life. I didn't even finish because it was just so like the Worlds to me was everything to get there.
Yeah.
Crashing in some race that I now can't even remember the name of.
Right.
Would have been an absolute disaster.
And Scheldeprijs is bigger than that, but in
Scheldeprijs is
in relative
is it World Tour
terms.
now? It's higher, but this was also a 1.1. Was you would have had the exact same teams lining up, probably the exact same riders.
Yep.
We would have been the much less cool Bas Tinema team.
Right.
We wouldn't have had fancy looking bikes or a kit, but I'm just thinking about it with Wout van Aert's crash last week, missing out on Flanders then, and with Philipsen having finished second in Paris-Roubaix last year. You kind of have to start thinking: is he a bit nervous about having a get down today that might take him out of Roubaix? It would be on my mind, but these guys are wired differently.
Yeah, because he's a legit contender this weekend. I know we mentioned the shoe covers before. Who makes those? Because they're all differently branded.
And I know at one point Van der Poel and his team were using the Sokolone overshoes. That was Caden Groves that just passed. We probably could have asked him. He definitely picked up we were speaking English there, but they might well be from the sock brand Sokolone or the Dutch brand Sokolone.
They're all branded up Zwift because Zwift is a sponsor of Alpecin de Koenig. Most bike races I go to, Tour de France, Giro, things like that, like I'm not a huge person, but I'm bigger than pretty much all of them. That is not true at a race in the middle of the week in the Low Countries.
There's a lot of strong guys here.
There's some big fellas in this bike race.
less so small fellas about.
Yeah. Matteo Trentin coming outside. He's got the full rubber feet. Warm toes.
He's also one of the few remaining riders on a classic drop handlebar.
Good for you.
Regardless
Matteo.
of which team he goes to and which integrated system they have, he sticks with
A man after my own heart.
the classic
right there.
drop bars. Which a lot of people are calling for a return of.
Yeah, I recently discovered a gouge in my travel bike bars on the eve of coming over here, and had to just chuck on a random set. I think they're like a gravel bar with a bunch of flair, and I hate it. And I was just looking around for just a bar that I would have wanted and have wanted for the last 10 years, right? Like a pretty classic drop, the right width. It's like they don't really exist anymore. They're all shallow.
You just need to go to one of those. Oh, that's a big bottle of Quaremont.
Woo!
Huge bottle of beer just walk past us.
Well, the race is about to start.
You just need to go to 10 years ago and buy a bar that still exists from back then. So the Data Zero.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
That bar still exists.
I just got to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Data is not as easy to get as it used to be. I think I can just order them online. Anyway, we're on a bit of a tangent now. The race is about to start, so I think we're probably going to wrap it up here. We're going to go head to Schoten, which is where the finish is. Hope you enjoyed this special episode of Performance Process from the ground here at Scheldeprijs. I'm just following Ronan. Where are you going, Ronan?
Not really sure. Probably somewhere we're not allowed to go.
I don't think anyone will care. All right, well, good luck to all of the bicycles that we talked about today and the riders that are on top of them. We'll be back.
This isn't a podcast about the riders.
Well, when you're getting this, we'll be back this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, with episodes from the Women's Roubaix on Saturday and the Men's Roubaix on Sunday. Lots of tech, lots of racing.